Welcome back to another Mackem in the Middle podcast and the second episode as a championship club once again. And I'm going to say that every time this season, and I'll never get bored of it, and I'm sure no one else will either. We are back with a different episode. Today we're going to be looking back at the entire season, picking out the best moments, the worst moments, just kind of looking back at everything and discussing it as a whole. Of course, we're going to have another podcast out in the next week or two, kind of looking ahead to the new season, once again, in the Championship, in case you forgot. Looking at the contract situations, which came out yesterday at the time of recording, and, of course, looking forward to the recruitment of Sunderland AFC. First and foremost, I'm going to start this, Michael, because you put it in the group chat and it reminded me, and it's probably a good way to start it. I think it was 3 years ago today you said we lost to Charlton in the playoff final.
Yes, well, obviously, I don't know if this is going out today, but for those context, it's the 26th of May today. So, yeah, 3 years ago to the day where we were condemned to a second season in League One.
Yeah. And how things have changed since.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, yeah, I had a quick look back, and it just dawned on me, because before we recorded this, I was in the pub with a friend of mine and we were talking about it. And then I just remembered, I've just remembered 3 years ago today was the day that we played Charlton at Wembley and contrived in the most Sunderland way possible to lose in the final. And then you actually look at it, and in a weird poetic way, it's kind of come full circle where we finally ended our playoff hoodoo. We finally won at Wembley in front of supporters. And I'll just get this out quickly. I'm pretty sure we can all agree that's for everyone associated with Sunderland that we've tragically lost over the last year. Your likes of your Louise Wanless, your Graham Wright, your Michael Waggetts, and anybody else that I'm probably going to forget to mention. I think it's safe to say that it felt very fitting that at least we did win it for them. So I just thought I'd put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did record a podcast straight after the game, Kyle, but you weren't here for. I believe you slept in that day, wasn't it?
I did, yes. I was celebrating a little bit much.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I think everyone was. And like I said, I still am, to be fair, and probably will be for the foreseeable.
We barely get anything to shout about, so you might as well while you can.
Yeah, just milk it. Absolutely milk it. But obviously this podcast is going to be about the entire season and looking back at the good, bad, funny, hilarious, tragic moments, just everything all in all. But before we get into that, obviously promotion at Wembley in the playoff final. I've always said winning the playoff final is the best way to get promoted as long as you win it. It's also the worst way to lose it. But as a Wycombe fan and as a hater of Wycombe Wanderers FC, I'm going to put that out there. I don't really care about that. But, what a day you were in America watching the game. It would have been quite early in the morning as well, so I'd imagine you've had a good day of drinking then.
It was, and I definitely want to take a minute to shout out just how awesome this fan base is just in general. And it's funny you go back to the Charlton game because I was pretty new into supporting Sunderland. I had just followed them like a few months before the Charlton playoff final, and I remember the feeling.
What a way for you to get introduced, Kyle. Sorry.
Hey, thank Netflix. I know I've explained it to you guys before, but it really was one of those things where I fell in love with the fan base and passion. And I remember watching that Charlton game. I was in a Home Depot or like a home improvement store watching on my phone. Literally, it felt like I got hit in the stomach when that goal went in, and I knew right then. I don't want to swear on the pod, but I was screwed at that point because I was like, I'm emotionally invested in this team. Like, what has happened? And the 4 or 3 years since then really has been incredible. The Wembley, the game over the weekend, and just we have the best fan base. We really do, for a number of reasons. But the content creators we have as an American fan, it makes a world of difference. And I'm sure fans around the world could really say it too. Michael, for example, your videos or Sean Middleton, I was dying watching the fan react like live when he was in Trafalgar Square, and I'm just watching on the fans and just dying laughing during work, just being like,
I was as well, especially when Sean was going, "Hey, man, do you know where Trafalgar Square is?"
Right.
Down the streets of London, clearly lost. Right. I know what you mean. It's that community, isn't it?
Got to say, I did get lost a few times in London as well. I will.
Fair enough. But yeah, I started to ramble on, but I want to take a minute and just anyone who because it takes time, it takes effort, it takes commitment. And as an American fan, or just as any international fan, it really does make a world of difference because you can feel it. Like you can, just like with the documentary, I could feel the passion, I could feel the fan base, and just the love that everybody has for the city and the club. You felt that over the weekend, and just to see smiles for once, just smiles as like literally you watch any video and just people laughing and finally having a good time. I think in general, I think a lot of people needed it. I think as a fan base, we definitely needed it. And I'm still over the moon about it. So anyone who puts the time out there to make the content, the videos, and even the people who aren't associated with the club, but just follow it, like the YouTube vloggers and stuff, I love it. I can eat up all the content throughout the summer until next season. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
No worries.
Getting into the season then, Dan, probably the biggest roller coaster of a season, to be honest, since we've been in League One. We started the season very well, some good results, had an absolutely shocking form. Well, had shocking form halfway through the season where we, I think it was 7 or 8 games we went without a win. We've had 2 managers, like I said, ups and downs all the season, but it was a perfect way to end the season with a Wembley win at the playoff final.
Yeah, it was. And, it was kind of very Sunderlandish, wasn't it? Like, I know it is a season review, so looking back at the start, like we did start the season actually very well. Like I think it was Wigan and MK Dons we beat.
Yeah.
And then obviously we had the dip in form and the whole manager saga, but just the ending to it all was amazing. And best way to go up, like you said, playoff final. I liked how assured we looked and confident in that match. Like there was never really any doubt in the managers or the players that we were going to win that match, which was very reassuring as a fan to see, regardless of everything else.
Yeah. And obviously, like I said, Michael and Will keep saying for the next 50 minutes or whatever, season full of ups and downs. Had someone said at the start of the season, we're going to lose 6-0 to Bolton, 5-1 to Rotherham, 3-0 to Sheffield Wednesday, 3-1 I think it was at home to Lincoln. God knows however many shocking results I've missed out. I think we lost to a couple of League Two sides in the Cup as well.
4-0 to Portsmouth as well.
4-0 to Portsmouth, yeah. Score a last-minute winner against Wycombe, only to then concede a last-minute equaliser to Wycombe. Like I said, there's so many negatives of this season. If I mentioned all of that at the start of the season, said we're still going to end up getting promoted at the end of it, you'd laugh, probably.
I can't really add to that. You've just summed up the entire season in about 20 seconds. But yes, well, here's one for you lads, and I don't know if anyone knows this, but when was the last time that a team got promoted in the same season when they've lost 4-0, 5-1, 3-0, and 6-0 all in the same year?
And sacked their manager as well.
Yeah, I spent two games with Mike Dodds at the wheel.
It's so Sunderland to do it this way, though. In a way, so you've had 4 of the worst defeats in the club's history, but in the same year you go and win the playoff final. This club just never ceases to amaze, does it?
Probably the best way to do it, because no one's going to remember those. We will, but in the context of the season.
Well, all right then. Just to count out that with a question, I know. I'm sorry, Josh, if you want to try and get onto it later, but I'm going to say it now. Do you think that 6-0 defeat to Bolton, which then got rid of Lee Johnson? It'd be interesting to see how the season would have happened if, say, we had not lost that game, Johnson had stayed, but then hadn't gone up. If that makes sense. So, in a way, that 6-0 defeat to Bolton, you could argue was a turning point towards us eventually going up. But you're right though. Like I would have laughed if you'd said to me that at the start of the season you're going to suffer 4 heavy defeats, pretty much all within about 2 months of each other, 2-3 months of each other, and still end up getting promoted. You would have laughed your head off. You certainly would have got. You should have put it on at the bookies, to be honest, because you would have got some extremely good odds.
Yeah. That is a very interesting analogy to think that we got promoted because we lost 6-0 to Bolton. Like I do like that.
I can't take credit for that. I think someone on social media claimed that, but I just saw it.
Yeah. But likewise, Kyle, forgetting some of the terrible results that we've had this season, there's also been some very good ones. And I think the most notable one, other than obviously the playoff final and the playoff semi-final against Sheffield Wednesday, was the likes of the 2 Wigan games, possibly 3 Wigan games if you want to include the cup game as well. There's been some very good results over the season as well. Obviously, that Sheffield Wednesday home victory as well, 5-0, I think it was. There's been some very good results as well.
Yeah, I'm looking back through the results as well, and it's funny how you can just look at the scoreline and remember it. But yeah, the Wigan game, especially the opening one, I really felt like that was a big kind of launching board for us. Coming out, it was all the back and forth with Wigan fans all throughout the summer about Charlie White, right, and just all that nonsense. And for us to come out and just kind of handily beat them 2-0 was right. Was that the first one of mine? Looking at the wrong.
2-1.
It was 2-1. That's right. Okay. Yep. Yeah. And then
but we beat them 2-1.
Yeah, it was like a couple weeks later we played them. That's right. Yeah, Cup. But yeah, the 2-1. what a game. What a game. And it just really kind of put us on the map and just said, hey, we are for real this season. Boy, how things twisted and turned throughout that. But I just remember that feeling, a lot of optimism coming into the season. And it for good reason. I think we did look pretty decent to start the season, and that Wigan game went a long way to kind of tell that.
Yeah, and obviously, Dan, a lot's changed since the start of the season compared to the end of the season. Players have come and gone. The manager's come and gone. The way we play has changed drastically. But especially at the start of the season, like Kyle says, there was a lot of optimism about this season, especially after the first 5-6 games, because we were playing better football. Players were in form that hadn't possibly performed to the best of their abilities in previous seasons or previous clubs. Ross Stewart was banging form at the start of the season, and obviously that continued throughout the entire season. But it is obviously quite a hard comparison to make because we did fall off a little bit and a lot changed. But that optimism at the start of the season ultimately paid off.
Yeah, I won't I won't easily forget it. Like, I remember kind of August time, we set out a goal to lower the squad age, or not August time, but it was said we lowered the age of the squad. We signed the likes of Sirkin, Huggins, the Jackie Doyle, Broadhead even, and we had a really good start to the season, beating Wigan and MK Dons. I think we were the first time we were top of the table in League One.
Yeah,
At the end
it was,
of
yeah.
August, we bet Wickham. And I think we smoked Cheltenham 5-0 in September as well. We were still top two. And that's kind of when it turned for us. But the start of the season was like, you couldn't have dreamt of it going any better. Like, we were top two the whole way, top of the table. So just kind of seeing how it spiraled out of control was obviously funny looking back now, but it's very interesting to kind of see how we've ended up.
Yeah. And obviously, again, another thing that changed, all season, obviously the ownership, the backroom staff, Michael, the recruitment is probably one of the things that you'd look back on and think that is ultimately what got us to where we are. Obviously, the change in manager to Alex Neil obviously plays a big factor in that as well. But the recruitment at the start of the season was possibly, trying to think of the word, scrutinised, I suppose, especially in January. People think that we're short in depth in some areas and possibly a little bit too heavy in others. But in comparison to other seasons, the recruitment has been spot on. We've brought in young players who, some of them haven't played professional football before, like Sirkin and Doyle, who've always been stuck in 23 sides at what were their old clubs. Obviously, Sirkin is Sunderland playing now. Callum Doyle's went back to Man City, but it's a nice change to have players come here with a point to prove, as opposed to signing, Danny Graham, 35, 36 years old, who, if we don't get promoted, it doesn't have any bearing on his career whatsoever. And you could see that in the players, especially at the playoff final, how much it meant to them that they actually progressed their career along with the club.
Well, it's aligned interests, isn't it? As you with the younger players, but if not even just the younger players, you look at some of the players that we brought in, which is like Jack Clark, albeit on loan, Alex Pritchard and Patrick Roberts, just as examples. Alex Pritchard and Patrick Roberts as two permanent signings alone. Who would have thought we'd be able to get both of those players in League One? Patrick Roberts has been more or less playing. He had that spell with Celtic, but he's more or less been in the Championship for the majority of his last few years of his career. Alex Pritchard, we know, is too good for the level. So, and obviously the criticism that we had was they came in when they weren't exactly fully fit. But there was a meeting with the Red and White Army a few months ago when Christian Speakman made a very good point. As said, would a fully fit Alex Pritchard or a fully fit Patrick Roberts drop down to League One? No, of course they wouldn't. So we had the chance to get the players, and we got the players in. And if you look at someone like Patrick Roberts and look at the pair of them, they both, especially at Patrick Roberts, who came in January. I wanted him playing for the last 10 or so games of the season because you get your fitness up, and by the time you get to the playoffs, when it really matters, then he's going to be able to make a positive difference. And I think we can agree Patrick Roberts was very good in the 3 games that he played. So look, Christian Speakman has definitely made mistakes. Don't get me wrong; they're not perfect. They have made mistakes, but I don't think personally they've done anywhere near as bad as what I've seen some fans like to say they are. I saw one person quote that I think Speakman got lucky with the appointment of Alex Neil, which I disagree with. Speakman was still part of the recruitment process to get Alex Neil. Again, Alex Neil. Who would have thought Alex Neil would drop down to League One? Nobody. So for me, yes, okay. Again, the 2-week thing with Roy Keane and everything else is they do deserve to be questioned on those, because there are faults with their strategy with those appointments, or not appointments with Roy Keane. But in general, the recruitment has been night and day ahead of over the last few seasons. Like I said, could you have seen us even going for Pritchard and Robertson before this new structure was in place? I couldn't.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree with that. And obviously, this is kind of looking back at this season, Kyle, but just to briefly use that point of recruitment to look ahead to the next season a little bit, not too much, because like I said, we'll be doing a podcast specifically on that. But if the recruitment stays the same and, the same kind of data-driven approach is used in the summer, it does make it exciting to see what type of players we could bring in. If you look at some of the calibre of players we've brought in since we've been in League One, especially this season, like Michael said, the likes of Pritchard, £10 million player, Jack Clark, £10 million player, Roberts the same. It's exciting to see what could happen in the summer.
Right, and I already see some fans. They're kind of going back and forth about how much we're going to spend. We don't really have any control over that, which is unfortunate. But Lou Dreyfus has said that there was a budget allocated for when we get promoted, and now it's kind of time to see where the priorities lie. It's the championship, though. We've seen it absolutely ruin clubs, right? With just horrible spending. I mean, we've been one of those clubs, right? I mean, it kind of took longer than that, but the championship is definitely can be a black hole. So there has to be a system in place, right, to develop and to recruit the type of players. I think anyway, because I think there was a lot of eyes on this game, and especially the highlights. We see it on Instagram, we see it on YouTube, and I don't know what player, especially in the championship, wouldn't want a chance to kind of play for this club. And you see how the fans showed up at Wembley, and you hear the crowd singing, and I get chills like every single time. And what player wouldn't want to play for that? And so now we're in a much more advantageous position. Instead of having to convince players, hey, let's drop down to League One, let's give that a shot, because players are prideful, right? That's just kind of what it boils down to. That's why they're so successful. They have confidence in their abilities. They don't want to play League One. It's going to be so much easier to convince them now, hey, look at this fan base, look at this club, look at the support we have, and we're the championship. We're one step below the Premier League. We're going to be playing against some of the best players in the world as well. This division's tough, so we have to seize this opportunity. We have a lot of momentum. I do want us to kind of keep this core squad together. I think that's important when it comes to stabilizing in the championship, having that momentum, having the belief, having the belief in the players around you and the coach, and then bring in some skilled players here and there to kind of bolster it up. But yeah, it's really exciting. This summer is going to fly by. I mean, this whole transfer window, the recruitment, everything, it's going to fly by, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I suppose what we'll do now is we'll just go into looking at certain aspects of the season, going through the best and the worst of every little thing we can. And Dan, I'll start with you, and obviously we'll go through all three of yours for each one. Worst result of the season. There's been a few to pick from. Obviously, different ones have different kind of impacts on the season. Obviously, like I said, a couple of games that we lost in the cup to League Two sides, and you probably won't include them, but you could. So if you had to pick one out, worst result of the season, obviously we'll counter this straight after with the best.
On paper, it probably isn't the worst result, but just in the nature of how it happened, I'd say the 2-1 loss to Doncaster when we had Mike Dodds in charge. Like Ollie Younger marshalling their defence to a victory against us. Like it's just, it was a hard watch, and like knowing kind of what was going on in the background and the implications it could have and probably should have had on our season, was just really a really difficult watch for a Sunderland fan. Like knowing that we should or could have a manager appointed by now, and sending like a low level, probably under 23s coach out to watch over our senior team, just wasn't good enough from the hierarchy at that point in the season for what we wanted to do. So I'd say the low point was probably that 2-1 loss in February.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. Michael, what would you go with?
This is very. I was thinking this would be a decent one to pick from, but Daniel's just made that a bit harder when you look at the context of the results.
I think it's quite incredible about how many results you could pick out of this, and yet we're still talking about
There's too many to choose from.
No, I couldn't agree more there. Honestly, again, it just goes back to what I said before. Only someone could do this. Okay, I'm going to be different. I'm not going to pick any of the hammer-ins, but there's two results. I can't pick between both of them because they're both exactly the same. You probably know where I'm going with this. The 1-1 draws away at Shrewsbury and Accrington when we were exactly, whoever said oof, exactly. That's the point. You're 1-0 up. The opposition's reduced to 10 men. You're in a comfortable position, and we somehow don't win both games. It's just, like at the time. Thankfully, it doesn't matter now. But at the time, if you look how many points we actually finished off the top 2 places, I think it was something like 6 points or whatever it was. If you imagine if you get the extra 4 points in those games, then one more win elsewhere, you would have been in the top 2. You probably would have won the league. So,
Yeah.
but it was those silly games when I was really worried at one point that was going to cost us promotion. And if we hadn't had won the playoffs, then I think I would have said that those 4 points are 4 points that are lost. But it's the fact that we were winning when both teams were reduced to 10 men. And especially Accrington, it was just horrendous. If you remember, we threw everybody forward, forgetting, lads, we're 1-0 up and they're down to 10 men. They're not going to do anything. We flew everyone forward and they hit, and we got countered from our own corner and ended up conceding an equaliser. Again, peak Sunderland in the worst possible way. But those two, you could pick any of the hammerings as the worst results in our history. But those 2 results, I think, were also just as damaging in different ways.
Yeah, I was lucky enough, again, to be at both of them games.
I mean,
Sure,
yeah,
I'll look back at that in the future and laugh at that, hopefully, when we're established in the Champions League in 3 years' time.
Come on. Well, it's baby steps, isn't it?
It is, one step at a time. Kyle, worst result of the season?
Are we gonna do worst, we're gonna do best? Are we gonna do the funniest result? Because that
We're
might change.
gonna do so many different things.
Go on, do funniest. Have a laugh.
So just one that sticks out because it was also pretty bad. It was the 4-0 against Portsmouth, and it was only because it was unwatchable. It really was. I mean, the amount of water that was
Unplayable,
on the pitch
to be fair.
was
Aidan
unbelievable.
O'Brien masterclass.
Right, and what was so frustrating about that is like we still, God bless Lee Johnson, I guess, I don't know, but we still tried to play. We still tried to play like this attacking football down the wings, and it's like that's where the water is. The water is down the wings. If we just play route one, and if we can get out of here with a draw or even keep it 1-0, maybe the ref will call it off. But it's the fact that we were down what, 3? Was it 3-0 at half?
3-0 down at half time.
Yeah, so and we were so close to being like, yeah, maybe they'll call it off, maybe they'll call it off, and we just kept conceding. It's like they're never going to call it off now, and just like seeing how the Portsmouth celebrated and how much it meant to them, and just like players like John Mark was just laughing. It's just like this game for one should have just never happened, and for two, it's just like it was. I remember watching it just being like, this is a farce, and they were making fun of it on social media, like how are they playing in League One? I was like, it was just a very, very League One game. So for me, that goes into one of the worst, if not one of the more funny games. But I think there's even funnier games to choose from as well. So
just out of interest, Kyle, would you be saying it was as funny if we hadn't got promoted?
Right. I mean, this would be a lot more of a painful podcast, and I probably wouldn't have
Definitely
been on,
would.
to be honest. But yeah, I mean, it's still. I think it was very early in the season, or early-ish in the season, so there's still some humor to be had. But
don't worry, Kyle. It was the first of the many hammerings that we got
right.
that season. But it was funny what you said when we literally still tried to play football when it was clear that there were like 2 meters in deep in puddles. Oh, don't worry, lads. Just try and put your foot through the ground and just kick the ball off. What? You broke your leg? No, keep doing it.
Yeah. Oh God, it's just horrendous. But yeah, that was a weird stretch for us. But that game was just, the amount of rain and water was unbelievable.
Yeah. I'll go straight back to you for this one, Kyle. And we'll counter it with the best result of the season.
Oh, jeez.
And I mean, obviously, the standout result of the season is
right,
fairly obvious, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, this is tough. It's tough just to choose one, and at least I get to go for it. I would say the first leg against Sheffield Wednesday, to me, I think just kind of encapsulated what everyone had talked about for the last 3 or 4 years, just saying, Sunderland's the sleeping giant. If we can just get out of this league, and unlike previous playoffs, the fans showed up, and the display with the cat eyes, and then the display was at the West End, with the red and white stripes, and just the noise. And I've watched that Ross Stewart goal so many times, and just the way we played and the confidence. I think we kind of knew at that point we would have liked to score more, obviously, but it was the whole ambiance and just like the build up to that game, and seeing the display in the crowd and how full it was, because I never got to see really Sunderland in the past, right, in the Premier League, when they would, sell out games and things like that, or during their heyday. And so that was really my first taste of being like, this is awesome. This is so flipping cool. And yeah, it was just a great game, great result. And then I think that really springboarded us obviously into the second leg as well. So
yeah, Michael. best result of the
Yeah,
season.
it's like what Kyle said. It's so weird that in a season where you can pick so many from for worst result, that you can also pick so many from best results. But for me, probably the obvious one is Saturday, the Wembley one.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of a home game in particular, I'm going to go with the 5-0 against Sheffield Wednesday, because that was just there was something special for me that night about beating. I remember this wasn't a bad Sheff Wed team. Yes, okay, they weren't on great form at the time, but it wasn't the same as beating Morecambe or Cheltenham 5-0. You know, those results are, at the risk of sounding arrogant, more expected. Whereas Sheffield Wednesday was just one. This was a team that beat us, I think, 3-0 like 6 weeks beforehand.
Yeah.
So to go there and get our own back on them, and I remember that game we started somewhat poorly because Sheff Wed were actually the better team at 0-0. But once we scored, we didn't look back, and we were like 3-0 up inside 30 minutes, I think, which was absolutely mind-boggling for a team of that size and a club of that size and a team that good to win against Sheff Wed. And it was right before the new year. It was just after Christmas, and I came out of the game thinking that was one of the best games I've seen at the Stadium of Light for some time. It was a great performance. The atmosphere was great. People were singing left, right, and centre. But I think Kyle's shout of Sheff Wed in the playoffs, I think, was very good. And I think it just goes to prove that, as the commentator said that night, the tie of giants was describing of Sunderland Sheffield Wednesday. But no, for me, 5-0 against Sheff Wed. You could easily pick Saturday, of course, but if we're talking across the regular season to be different, then Sheff Wed at home. One of the best nights I've enjoyed for a long time.
100%. Last but not least, Dan, best result of the season.
Yeah, the two lads have gone for my top two, so I'm struggling here to pick.
Just
one,
pick Wembley. Go on.
The one I'll go for is the only Sunderland game I've ever been to, the 5-1 win at Cambridge, or against Cambridge in the Stadium of Light. Just because obviously it was my first game, I enjoyed it so much. But it was a stage where Ross Stewart hadn't scored in a while. I think he broke his duck there. He got a penalty and a really well worked kind of half volley into the bottom corner.
Yeah.
Breaking the streak kind of just in time coming into playoffs. And yeah, it was just a very, very good performance from all the lads. Great football, great atmosphere, and I had a great time there. So yeah, that was my favourite result.
Yeah. Back to you again, Dan. And it's kind of similar, but not necessarily the same. Worst performance of the season. Obviously, different result based on the performance of the game. We might not have actually lost the game, but the performance could have been terrible. But if you had to pick one, what would you outline as the worst?
The 6-0 Bolton loss. Just everything about us just said we were not going up. Then after that, the body language of the players, it didn't look like anyone wanted to be there. They ran rings around us that day, and I think it was straight after that we lost 2-1 to Doncaster. Then and then 2-1 to Cheltenham after that. We were kind of on a very bad run just for a while, and you could say all those results were just the worst result of the season, just because they all came one after the other.
Yeah.
And there was a sense of hopelessness around kind of the end of January before we appointed somebody instead of Lee Johnson. So I'd go with that 6-0 Bolton loss as the worst result of the season. Heaviest anyway.
Michael, worst performance of the season?
Oh, God. This is so hard to pick. Again, like there's so many different options for worst performance, and ones that you just think, oh, just no. Well, obviously, I would have probably gone for 6-0 Bolton, so Daniel's got his own back there for picking the option I would have picked. But, if I had to pick one for worst performance, I'd say probably the 5-1 at Rotherham. I think was probably up there because it was, and the worst part of it is for me, I didn't, contrary to what everyone said, I didn't think Rotherham were that good. I think they just showed a bit of physicality and bullied us, and that was it. That was literally all they did. If you look at all of the goals, yes, they pressed us a bit, but all of the goals, literally every one of them was a Sunderland error in the build-up to it. And when we went down to 10 men as well, that just encapsulated it even more. So I think for one result that really could have cost us, again, an automatic promotion. I mean, hopefully we'll get our own back on them next season in the Championship. But yeah, that 5-1 at Rotherham was just something else. I've just never seen anything like it. And especially, like we said, getting hammered is bad enough, but getting hammered in the third tier of English football is just not acceptable at all whatsoever. So, yeah, performance-wise, we just got completely overwhelmed and overawed. So, yeah, Rotherham 5-1 for me.
Yeah, and Kyle?
Yeah, one that sticks out, I guess you could also say it's a really funny performance and just funny game in general, was the 3-1 against Lincoln City at home. And it was right after we conceded literally the last second equalizer to Wickham. And then we come back and play Lincoln City at home. And of course, it's our dear friend Chris McGuire, who put on quite the performance. I think probably scoring his only goals of the entire season. And celebrating right in front of Lee Johnson and us getting a red. It was just what a horrible game. I think that was one of the first ones that I turned it off like pretty early into the second half. It was just a horrible performance at home. Everyone was flat. The crowd was flat. It was just horrible. And just like I said, seeing Chris McGuire celebrate in front of Lee Johnson, it was very funny in context now. But at the time, it was just like, how many goals can we concede to former players? Because I mean, it happened against MK Dons as well with what's it, Wickham? Connor Wickham?
Yes.
Connor
Right.
Wickham scored the
And
equal, yeah.
Even Declan John scored
What a
against us
winner
this
was it?
season.
Declan John, even Tom Flanagan
the
scored
left back
against
that
us.
never existed.
Yeah. Tom Flanagan scored against us as well. It's unbelievable. And that was one where it's just like, it really is a curse, isn't it? There's something about that, but I don't know. Maybe this is
So
a
is that,
season.
sorry, is that 6 goals we've conceded this season to former players?
I mean,
Right,
that's
but-
at least.
There's a three Chris McGuire, Declan John, Tom Flanagan, and oh yeah, it's 6 goals. Goodness me.
Yeah,
Probably
at least-
another record we've broken.
I'm sure that Lincoln
Possibly.
game, didn't we have a chance to go a few points clear of Wigan as well? Even though
More
Right.
than likely. More than
that
likely.
was the point where we really could have put a gap over them.
Yeah, we were
Yeah,
singing
mate.
top of the league. Yeah, that's when they were singing top of the league against Wickham. Yeah, right before. Anyways, it's just what a weird season. But yeah, that performance against Lincoln stood out to me as one of the worst for sure.
Yeah. And again, Kyle, switching it, best performance
Ah,
of the season.
best performance. I mean, there's a good chunk to choose
And I've got to
from.
say, I'm just going to chuck one in here, and it's probably controversial, but I would generally consider that draw against Charlton as one of the best performances of the season.
Is that when we hit off the post a bunch, or is that the Lincoln game? Or no, was it Charlton?
You could
Charlton
put both of them in
absolutely
best, to
dominated the
be
game,
fair.
created so many chances. Their keeper made so many saves. We played very, very well and just didn't come away with the win. But
You could even
performance
put both of
difficult.
those games in the same category there for me.
Yeah. But
Right.
if you had one, Kyle, which one would you go for?
Oh, I mean, best before. I mean, the 3-0 against Wigan definitely stands out. As one that it was still pretty early under Alex Neil, and to kind because we went and we drew a couple games. We lost the one against MK Dons. And we were really hoping, because we were very critical at the time, like, how could we, even as bad as Lee Johnson was at points, it's like, how could we sack a manager, not have the plan? There's a lot of unrest, a lot of unease, but to kind of see them all come together under Alex Neil against Wigan, and just to have a dominating 3-0 performance. I mean, I felt like they didn't even have a sniff in that game, and maybe if I rewatched it, that'd be different. But I think we saw the vision at that point. It was just such a good performance, and that really had to be a springboard to get us to where we are now. It's just that definitely, righted the ship, so to speak, got us on side saying, hey, we can still do this. There's still plenty of games left. I think, yeah, Michael, you were pretty optimistic at this point. I think I was already like, no, we're out of it. But you were like, no, we could still win the league, really, which obviously didn't happen. But that was finally, if we had lost that game, I mean, I would have been pretty close to game over, and to see him come through like
that was a big turning point in the season, wasn't it? I think that equalised against Burton and then winning at Wigan was the cap that set the run that led us to going up.
Yep.
Yeah, Michael,
Yeah.
best result, best performance, not result.
Oof. Okay, probably one at the very start of the season. And it was a defeat, 1-0 against Burton, which was one that was. I remember.
That's good shout. Good shout.
Yeah, I remember sneakily watching the game on my phone, even though I really shouldn't have. Sorry, work, if you're listening, but I don't think that's fair. But I remember that I watched it on my phone, and we dominated. How on earth we lost that? How we didn't win that game, let alone draw it, I don't know. I mean, Burton were literally under the cosh. I think even Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank came out after the game and said that we were very, very fortunate to win that. Whereas I remember we had a goal at the end that was wrongly chalked off. Bye-bye League One officials. See, hopefully the Championship ones are less rubbish. But we dominated. Yeah, I wouldn't. I suppose I wouldn't either. But we dominated the game. We did everything we could but score. And it's kind of like the Charlton performance. Well, I agree with you, Josh. I think the Charlton performance was really good as well, as was Lincoln. But I think the Burton one was just the amount of chances we created and the type of chances we missed was just something else. I think Kyle's shout of 3-0 Wigan is a good one because it depends what you define as best performance. Best footballing performance, best game management performance is probably two different things. So in game management, I think Wigan is up there. But I'd have to pick Burton. I think that I've never seen Sunderland play so well and yet not come away with anything, frustratingly.
Yeah, Dan?
By no means was it our best performance, but I'd just like to mention that Carabao Cup game against Arsenal. Just because of the way the team conducted themselves. And, we were actually in the game for a bit when Nathan Broadhead scored that goal. I think we all had a bit of hope before he went off injured. Obviously, looking back now, we never really stood a chance, did we? But just bringing us back to, I think it was in Wembley, wasn't it? Or into London anyway. It was in Arsenal Stadium.
London,
Yeah, it was Arsenal.
Yeah, sorry. Just kind of the fan base going for a big day out. Just kind of brought us all together again for the first time in a good while. And there was that kind of camaraderie and atmosphere there that wasn't there before for a long time in the club. But if I'm going to go best performance, I'm going to go Bourne inside a playoff final.
Yeah.
Just because other than that Bailey Wright mistimed header, I didn't ever feel like we were really threatened too much by Wickham, and I was just so confident in what the team was doing and how they were playing that we would come away with the win. How we kind of controlled the game, the attacking kind of setup we had, and the way we dealt with their pressure, and just came away victorious was kind of all Alex Neil's work and the hard work of players culminating in one big last push. So yeah, I'd say the 2-0 Wickham playoff win.
Yeah, fair enough. The next one it's going to be the funniest moment of the season.
Yes.
So you can either base this on or off the pitch. There's definitely a few videos and stuff, and there's definitely one that sticks in my mind right now as to the funniest moment of the season, and I'm see if any of you mention it, because if you don't, I certainly will at the end.
I think I'm on the same page.
Dan, start with you.
Do you know what? There's so much you can look at: the Defoe saga, the manager saga, just the funny videos of Luke O'Nien. But what I'm going to go for is a bit obscure, and I'm going to say the Papa John's Trophy game where we played the United under-21s and they had Paul McShane lining up centre back.
Yeah,
it was just so bizarre, and I don't know if he was there to kind of coach them through the game, but he was one of the worst
player
players
coach, I think, wasn't he? Yeah.
The game just bypassed him. So I found that very amusing at the time. I think it was when our under-23s bet their under-21s. So
yeah, pretty much.
That was quite funny.
Under-21s plus McShane.
Yeah.
Michael.
I'm glad you didn't go to me first. I was struggling to think because there's so many of them. Looking back, I suppose you could say the funniest was Portsmouth, just that performance because of what Kyle mentioned before with how
right.
That actually got a lot funnier in hindsight. If I had to pick one, and it's a really weird moment, but I've got a friend of mine and someone we both know who I thought looks like Mike Dodds, and I sent a picture of it was Jacob Kirkbride from Fan TV, and I was saying to him, "Hey Jacob, look, here's a mate called Johnny Thorns who looks like Mike Dodds when he was depressed after we lost 2-1 to Doncaster." I could just see how devastated he looked. I'd have to say probably the hilarious moment now, again in hindsight, is those 2 Mike Dodds games. We end up losing at home to bottom of the league Doncaster, and then we end up chucking away a lead away at Cheltenham Town, which I think is again just epitomises how shocking things were at that point. So. Oh, I'm trying to think. Do I go with that? Actually, do you know what? Right, I think probably it's a mixture of either that or Connor Wickham getting the goal on the break against us, and then against MK Dons at home.
Yeah. It's very interesting how a promotion has turned moments from very depressing to funny, I must say.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, I'm going to have to go with that whole period. I think that whole period is just full of banter. Looking back at it, I couldn't pick one out of them.
Yeah, and Kyle, them two haven't mentioned it yet. Let's see if you mention it.
Yeah, I have 2. Well, I have a couple really, but on the pitch,
you, Kyle, so you should.
Right. One of the funnier ones on the pitch was the goal, the Rotherham goal, the one that just happened a couple of weeks ago. And especially because it did kind of play quite a big impact, getting a point from that from that game, but just seeing, I mean, it was a wonderful header, and just seeing the ball get served and all of a sudden it's in the back of the goal, and you're like, well, how the hell we got away with that one, didn't we? And I just remember laughing at it, just being right. Yeah, right. Off the pitch though, for me, it's got to be it's Jermaine Defoe. It's not Jermaine.
Yeah,
I
can't believe
I watched that so many times.
Where's the parents' door?
Yeah.
Right.
I was waiting for someone to say it. I was waiting for someone to say
it. Was so funny. I've watched that so many times just because, for one, it was exciting, right? We were like, oh my god,
Actually, my answer. I'm going with that. That I can't believe I forgot that. It was funny because obviously I was with Fan TV at the time, and and Phil was just outside, and I was thinking, Phil, you absolute nutcase.
He's a madman.
You're going to end up getting hit with a restraining order soon enough. But yeah, it's like it's Jermaine Defoe. I think was he standing outside when Jake McKetty had the scarf picture? It's like, it's Jermaine Defoe. It's not Jermaine Defoe.
It's not Jermaine Defoe. Oh my! And then he's just going up to random cars, and then he looks, and then he rolls on the window, and he's like, "So just sign." Jermaine Defoe just looks at him like, for one, like, "Who the hell are you?" And for two, he's like, "Well, yeah. What do you think I'm doing here at midnight?" Like, of course I just signed. Like,
Jermaine, you're excited to be back. What do you think? Oh,
right. It was that moment, and it's even funnier now in the context of how things panned out for Jermaine Defoe, because I mean, it's I even got a Jermaine Defoe jersey off eBay. Like, it's actually a pretty nice one from I'll have to send you guys a pic in the Twitter, but it was just that moment, I think, really summed it up why this club is just so funny to follow, because I'm sure other clubs have their fan TVs and think, or I know they do. None are just as ridiculous as there's the couple fan TVs and
I think Arsenal fan TV is usually good watch after a defeat.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, we're just because of how ridiculous it is for us, and then the drama around the different. Which we're not going to get into, obviously, but that moment for me really stood out. I just couldn't. I watched it so many times and just laughed every single time because I was like, "How this is so ridiculous."
Yeah. Moving on back to performance based. Kyle, start with you. Most improved player of this season.
For me, oh goodness. Well, there's a few. One that really I think stands out, though, I would say, oh my gosh, there's so many. Dennis Irkin's one that kind of comes to mind, and it's only because I don't want to mention a few, because I'm sure you guys might as well. But I think Dennis Irkin really came in, and we were a little unsure at times. We knew he had somewhat of a pedigree, and he never really looked the part under John. I mean, at points I thought he did, but I mean, to see how well just the entire back line really played those last 2 or 3 months under Alex Neil, and to see him really step up, and I can't remember a single threat that went down his side, right? I mean, everything was perfectly played, and he was good on the ball and made the good runs and timed things right. And and the thing I also love about Dennis Irkin is his post-game interview, after the season, somebody was asking about it, and he's already embraced this club so much, and he gets it, and just that's one of those examples that we can use in recruitment, saying, look at Sirkin, he never really had a chance, at the really the starting level outside of the U23s and things like that, and he comes here, he's embraced by the club, he gets to play in front of 40,000 fans on the biggest stage, and look at how he embraced it, because not every player embraced it, as we've seen in the past, not to mention any names who have also played a similar position. But yeah, for me, it's Dennis Irkin. I think he played really well, and he's just got great hair. He's just overall just a very good looking dude, not gonna lie.
Yeah. Michael?
There's two that stand out to mind for me, but one of them I think is more obvious, so I'm going to save that one for either of you. So I'm going to say to Kyle, you can get your champagne corks out, because I'm going to say Lyndon Gooch.
Oh yes,
I'm going to say
get in.
I'm saying it because earlier in the season he had a good start. First couple of games he was really good, and then obviously he drifted into the Lyndon Gooch of trying to take so many players on and then being a bit incredibly frustrating. However, since Alex Neil came in, and especially in the last 10 or so games, when he has played as a wing back or as a full back, I'm going to say this, I think defensively he's been outstanding in the games that I've watched. The 2 legs against Sheff Wed, in particular the second leg, I think he was just superb. I think hardly anything, apart from the one chance that Sheff Wed created across the 2 legs, obviously was the pass from Bannon to Johnson, I think it was, Marvin Johnson on the right-hand side. I might have got that wrong, and Gregory gets a tap in. But that was more Patrick Roberts, I think, than Lyndon Gooch. But otherwise, Gooch, I thought, was excellent. And even in the final, barring one hairy moment, again, Gooch just did everything down his side. And he had to deal with Brandon Hanlon coming on as well. But in general, I would say Lyndon Gooch, and especially defensively, brilliant. As you know, I still don't particularly rate him going forward, but I think if you had him as a wing back or a full back, even in the Championship as a squad player, I wouldn't have any complaints.
Yeah. And Dan?
Well, obviously, I think Anthony Patterson has been immense since coming back into the team.
Yep.
Which is credit to kind of our coaches and the staff, because I don't think this time last year he would have been capable of doing what he has done, that save against Folks, and just his assured performances in the league since he's come back in. But I'm actually going to go for Bailey Wright as my most improved player. Now, by no means was he a bad centre back or like just like he wasn't bad, not at all. But I think he's really grown as a leader, and he looks so assured, so calm on the ball. Kind of, he's big, he's strong, he's comfortable passing out from the back now, and he looks like someone who can make the step up and play in the Championship, which I didn't think he could last year or even at the start of the season. His performances throughout the season have been consistent enough, putting in 7s, 8s every week, and kind of keeping really good strikers at bay recently. So I'd go for Bailey Wright.
Yeah. And I'm just going to chuck one in there because I'm quite surprised no one mentioned it, but Corey Evans as well.
That was who I was thinking of.
Yep.
I was going to
deserves a lot of credit. Yeah.
He's been incredible, hasn't he? I think if you look at the type of performance he was putting in earlier on in the season to now, he's gone from what he was doing earlier in the season to now. If he's starting in the Championship, if he keeps up performances, especially if you get another good midfielder alongside him, I'd have no complaints whatsoever. That's a testament to how much he has stepped up in recent weeks.
Yeah. Dan, back to you. Best signing of the season.
I think we've made very good signings actually now when you're trying to give me a best one or trying to make me pick a best one, but I would say Pritchard.
Yeah.
Just for his creativity, his free kick goals, what he's brought to us. You'd really notice when he was missing from the games he was missing in. He nearly scored a free kick in the final there. I think he whipped in 2. Close enough to
I
each
think
other.
there's probably still a few Sunderland fans celebrating that free kick, to be honest.
Yeah. It was a good 20 seconds before they realised.
Yeah. I remember watching it back on Sky, watching that free kick back, and I think there was a guy turned around to celebrate and was hugging everyone. And obviously he turned away from the pitch, so he didn't realise it hadn't gone in. And I think it must have been a good 20, 30 seconds he was celebrating for. So I do pity him a little bit.
Yeah, just the way he plays, the creativity he's brought to us, that calmness on the ball, and the way he can keep it ticking, I'd say Pritchard signed in the season.
Yeah. Michael?
Well, since Daniel said Pritchard, because he's definitely up there, but for one I'm going to go for is Patrick Roberts. I think Patrick Roberts in January was someone that, again, I've mentioned earlier, I was wanting to get playing because I really felt he could make a difference. And I think personally watching him that he is standard. And if we can get him on another contract, which is looking more and more likely, which is a positive sign, then all the better. But Patrick Roberts in recent weeks especially, and especially in the final, tore Wickham to shreds every time he had the ball. He was constantly getting down their left-hand side, or right, obviously. And he was breaking away with speed and with pace when it was 2-0 and they were trying to get a goal back in the game. And it was only thanks to poor decision making or finishing that he didn't score or at least have an assist to his name. So yeah, Patrick Roberts. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind he's too good for League One, and he proved it towards the latter half of the season.
Yeah, and Kyle.
For me, it's got to be Nathan Broadhead, of course. I mean, the goals that he scored. I mean, when he obviously wasn't fully healthy, pretty much after the Arsenal game, which he scored a great goal there, really showed his skill. But the lead up to the playoffs and the late goals that he contributed for and scored, we wouldn't be as happy as we are right now without him. So for me, it's got to be Broadhead. I mean, I do think we would have won the league if he stayed healthy. And I really wanted to say Defoe was our signing of the year, but no, that didn't quite pan out. Right. So up to Broadband, he was awesome. He was just so fun to watch. And just if we can somehow get Everton to just release him, and there's some injury concern there, sure, but maybe that works in our favor. Those types of tissue injuries can be tricky, but you never know. We took the risk on the players like Evans and Pritchard with the slight injury history, and it obviously panned out for us. So for me, it'd be Broadhead, but I would say Corey Evans would also be very close behind that. So
to be fair, with Broadhead, I think I'd be tempted to give him signing of the season just for that Dave the Rave clip alone.
Right. It's just, yeah, it was great. But yeah, like I said, those goals that he scored late were tremendous and huge in getting us promoted. So
Yeah. Back to you again, Kyle. And biggest surprise performer. So someone who's had a bigger impact than you probably thought would have at the start of the season.
That is a very, very good question. I would probably say Anthony Patterson, because I didn't. I mean, he was on loan to Notts County. Notts County is what, a National League team, right? Or they non-league, or what? I don't even know what division, but on loan at Notts County. We had the Bayern Munich goalkeeper coming in, and especially after Lee Burge and those health concerns, which is a shame, because Lee Burge on his day was very, very good as well. But we definitely felt some uncertainty, and to see. I remember when we first were talking about it, and it was always like, yeah, he doesn't really come out for the balls very well, or this and that. But I mean, toward the end of the year, there were still some moments. Don't get me wrong, but he's also very young, but to see him come out and he's the local lad as well, and play the way he did and represent the club and do well and keep a clean sheet at Wembley. I mean, for him, what a roller coaster of a season for him. Sorry to Notts County for taking him away, but we obviously needed him, and I think he came out of nowhere and absolutely took the spot and never gave it up.
Yeah, Michael.
Probably caught Winchester. I think he didn't obviously feature at the end, but when he was playing at fullback or even as a right-sided centre half, I thought he was very solid. And at the start of the season, he was getting a couple of goals, wasn't he, to his name? So
yeah.
And obviously, Carl Winchester, I thought was, the half season before where we had signed him midway through the 2021 season was all right, but I wouldn't exactly say anything particularly special. So this season, to be fair, having the season, he's personally, I still think, had a pretty good season. So for him to have the season that he has had off the back of a season where he's probably had to bed in, I think he's done really well, and fair play to the bloke.
Yeah, I'm done.
I'd go with Ross Stewart. I think looking back at the start of the season, we were kind of concerned as to where we were going to get all the goals from. Now, it probably wasn't a surprise to everyone how well he did, but we thought maybe he was 15, 20 goal striker. Like we hadn't seen much of him up until that point, so we were kind of unaware of how he'd do. And then kind of coming out and taking the league by storm the way he did, I'd say he's up there, top 3, top 2 strikers in the league this season. Miles better than Charlie Wyke, who he did replace, of course. So, although it probably wasn't a surprise to everyone, I'd go with Ross Stewart just because he's been so good throughout the season and just narrowly missed out on the Golden Boot.
Yeah. Moving on to the last two, the penultimate one, I think is the right word, isn't it? Second last. I believe it's penultimate. Could be wrong on that, but anyway, I'm going to go with it. Dan, goal of the season for Sunderland.
Oh, it'd be so easy to go for the Embleton playoff final goal. You know what? Just to be different, I'm gonna go with the absolute bullet header that Rotherham defender scored in the 1-1 draw.
Yes,
an immaculate finish. No keeper in the world's getting to that.
Crossbar as well, wasn't it? Always looks better.
Yeah. I don't, like Ross Stewart was in behind. I know he was offside and it wouldn't have counted, but I don't think Ross Stewart could have done what he did. So yeah, that's my Sunderland goal of the season.
Yeah, Michael.
Funny enough, I'm actually just trying to look back at the highlights now. So the one I'm going to go with, hang on, I need to see. I think it's either the second or the third goal against. No, I think it's the second goal against Cheltenham at home. To be different because the build-up and the passing to it, and the way that we just passed our way as a team to get the ball into the back to Ross Stewart in the back of the net, I think was so well done. I mean, obviously there's a few other standouts. Obviously Embleton in the final, Embleton against Wycombe at the start of the season. But yeah, I think for me, just from a team effort perspective, I would say the second goal against Cheltenham at home, where it's hang on, I'll be able to. I think it's Dan Neal who puts the ball forward to McGeady, who passed it to Ross Stewart, I think. No, sorry, I'm talking shite here. That's the wrong one. Ross, right, Carl, I promise this right. It's Carl Winchester puts the ball across the box, and Nathan Broadband does
Broadhead,
that backward flick with his foot, I think, or just leaves it. It deceives all of the Cheltenham back line. Ross Stewart's there to finish it. So really, really good team goal.
Yeah, Kyle.
There's two that stands out to me, and I can't remember exactly which game, but I'm pretty sure it was Nathan Broadhead. It was a very windy game. It was very nervy throughout, and it was pretty late on. But he gets the ball top of the box and just turns and just absolutely belts it into the top corner. I mean, if you guys help me out and remember which game, I can't remember which one it was.
Was it Cambridge?
He scored a header against Cambridge, I think. Trying to remember. Was it a home game, Kyle?
No, it was for sure away. It was for sure away, and I remember.
He's talking about.
Remember they're saying it was.
Away? Was it Cambridge?
I feel like it might have been Cambridge.
Let me look here real. Yeah, that would have been. Yeah, because the first goal, I think it was
2-1 win against Cambridge. Yeah,
it had to be that one. So that one stands out to me, but the other one as well is the second leg Sheffield Wednesday, the Patrick Roberts goal. I was pretty sick that day. I was like kind of glued to the couch, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just can't go through this. This is gonna be horrible if we chuck this away, and we almost did. And I mean, at the end, just seeing that play develop and seeing the cross go in and hit the back of the net, I jumped up so quick, and I almost passed out. Like I was so just like in a weird frenzy of feeling horrible just physically, and then just feeling the elation of that goal and just knowing that we did it at the end again. Oh my God, it was just and to see it come from Clark and Roberts too, two signings that came in January, and for them to, they'll always be remembered, which I think is really cool, and that's something that's really unique about playing for this club is there's moments that if you can capitalize on and really seize the moment, you'll be remembered forever. And that's really what you want as a football player, right? Is to be remembered. And oh God, what a goal that was. But yeah, that's my other one for sure.
That actually just reminded me. I remember Clark scored a worldie against, I think it was Fleetwood as well.
Yeah,
in a
Fleetwood
3-1 win, where he cut inside and just stuck it in the top corner. That was a great goal as well.
Yeah, we've had a few. Last but not least, Kyle, I'll start with you. Player of the season.
Oh, well, of course I would say Lyndon Gooch, right? I will say Lyndon Gooch just because of what I think the season meant to him. And I think there's still, it's funny how perceptions change, right? Because there's so many people, even people on this very podcast, who besmirch the name of Lyndon Gooch. But just to see what it meant to him. right. Oh my gosh, Josh. Yeah, I won't pull receipts on Josh in the Twitter threads, but just to see what it meant to him at the end and see the tears for him. I personally do think that was his last game. I really do think it was his last game for us, and not really for any reason other than I feel like at this point in his footballing journey, I think this was kind of the moment. I compared it to Frodo destroying the ring, right? And after he destroys the ring, he has to leave Middle Earth. That's how I feel about Lyndon Gooch, as nerdy as a reference as that is. He's done what he can. He came here to do. He got us promoted. He's done really all that he can at this point. I think it would probably benefit him just to, hey, let's just part ways now. Go on, have a good rest of your career. You'll be legend has been thrown around a lot, but for me, he'll be a legend. He was a big reason why I started following the club. As soon as I saw that there's an American on there, you need that sort of a connection, as lame as that sounds. But for me, the way he played throughout the season, battled the critics, and showed up on the biggest stages, and just to see what it meant for him, I mean, it was everything. I almost get emotional thinking about it, but I think I've done my emotional release.
Done and
Right. Yep. So for me, it's Lyndon Gooch, and
I have to say, I don't know if I'm just very uncultured, but I didn't get that reference at all. By the way.
The Lord of the Rings reference? Oh my gosh.
Not a fan.
I'm not a big Lord of the Rings fan, but I think I got the reference.
Oh my gosh. That's for another pod. We'll save that for another pod. But
Lord of the Rings discussion.
Are you doing the extended edition, Kyle?
Oh, are you kidding? Absolutely. I have a giant. I'll have to send you guys a picture of this. Well, I have a framed, really cool, Lord of the Rings map in my office. How I'm married is beyond me. I still don't understand why my wife, saw through the nerddom. But nevertheless, yeah, I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan.
Josh Blessman's going to be bashing his head off the keyboard as soon as we
start. Right. Sorry.
Michael, player of the season.
Oh, it's got to be Ross Stewart. with ultimately, you could look at it without his goals, as much as Nathan Broadhead's crucial he was when he was fit. Ultimately, across the whole season, Ross Stewart's been the standout player. Even in games when he hasn't scored, you can tell what he's contributing to the team. And again, obviously, we wish Charlie White well, and hopefully he's recovering, of course. But when you compare them as players, it's night and day. Ross Stewart's easily a better footballer. He contributes a lot more off the ball. Again, when he's not playing, he sets up chances for other people. I'd be interested to see what Stewart's stats are when it comes to chances created or assists and goals combined put together. Wouldn't surprise me if it's in the 40s or 50s region for Ross Stewart. But yeah, as I think Daniel touched on before, we didn't know what to expect from Ross Stewart going into this season. We certainly didn't expect him to score the amount of goals that he did. So yeah, it's got to be Ross Stewart. In terms of how important he's been to the team, whether just in goals and general play, there's hardly anyone else I can think of who deserves it.
Yeah. And Dan, you get the final say of Sunderland's reign in League One. Player of the season, who would you go with?
Yeah, the two boys have made really good shouts, but just for the sake of being different, I'm going to go with Embleton. I know he struggled for starts like towards the end under Neil, and even playing as well as he did, he got taken off just because of the way Alex Neil likes to manage. But getting us off the mark in the playoff final, the coming off the bench and contributing as much as he did, like whipping the ball into Broadhead for that late goal, and just contributing to massive moments coming towards the end of the season, regardless of if he was starting or coming off the bench, and like just the attitude he had of wanting to help the team no matter what his personal situation was. Kind of all came good in the end for him when he opened up the scoring in the playoff final. So I'll go with Embleton just for the massive contribution he made towards the end of the season.
Back-to-back promotions for him, isn't it? Embleton.
2 League One promotions.
I'll give an honourable shout out.
Hopefully, back to back.
So we win the playoffs next season, back to back promotions.
Yeah.
I'll give an honourable mention to Bailey Wright, by the way, because what a warrior he is. If you just look at the blood stain he had on his shirt and on his cut eye after Sheffield Wednesday away, warrior.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully that is the last time any of us have to talk about a season in League One ever again. It's been a pleasure. But hopefully never again.
No, it hasn't.
It hasn't. No, I'm lying. It really hasn't.
It'll be a pleasure putting our under-23s in the Papa John's Trophy next season.
Yeah.
Right.
And having international breaks.
Yeah, true.
Obviously, I'm not a fan of international breaks. I get bored, but having them breaks between the season.
There's also not having everyone see us as the big fish for
that's something we didn't mention as well. I think Lee Johnson played on during the international breaks. Anyone remember that?
Oh, yeah, there were many decisions, many ill-fated decisions, but I don't know. League One, at least for me, coming in from when I came into to support the club, it was a great history lesson because just seeing teams like Gillingham and Shrewsbury is just for one of the most like British-sounding teams I think I've ever heard in my life. But the people, especially my American friends who support like Tottenham and Man City and PSG teams like that, they'll never know what it's
Americans
like.
support PSG. Well.
One of my good friends does, which is just bizarre. So
I would disown him if I was you.
Right. So it's just, but they'll never know what it's like, and it's it's just.
Kyle, you're absolutely bang on. They'll never know what it's like for Phil Parkinson to settle for a point.
Oh goodness! Or the Gillingham long throws, or Carl Robinson calling the police. I mean, it's just those types of things that you just look back on now.
Steve Evans bouncing on the touchline whenever someone makes a tackle against his team.
Oh God, we could go on for another hour. So I'll stop there.
Long story short, start off League One. Hope to never see you again.
It's been fun. Yep.
Absolutely. But we will see what happens in the future, and hopefully that doesn't repeat itself. But we'll be back with another podcast to talk about the upcoming season. Like I said right at the start, looking at the contract situations, which hopefully by the time that we get around to recording that will have been sorted. We'll know who's here and who isn't. Obviously, we know who has been released from the club, which will be talked about in that podcast. We're going to be looking at a few players. Championship, in case you didn't remember.
Doesn't get tired saying it after all these years.
Hopefully this time next season we won't have to say that either, but one step at a time. But we'll be looking at players that we could bring in, and the reasoning behind some of the players being mentioned. And of course, we might have signed players by the time we get round to recording that. You never know. I'm sure there'll be a lot of happenings between now and then. But it has been a pleasure. Until then, we'll see you later.
That's all, folks.